You are watching
Like
Xirtus.
we knew this. I knew a lot of people were upset at the Joker for not being what they wanted. I'm like, yeah, but like that's me thinks this is the point, no? Like that the even then without having the context, it was clear that they did this on purpose. They spent all this time and money and made this musical that was like a terrible musical kind of because it didn't have I mean even the musical quality of it, the dancing quality of it was about people who like musicals but shouldn't really sing or dance. The music wasn't done. I mean, it's Lady Gaga. There's no reason why Lady Gaga shouldn't have, auto tune and the music behind her. There should be big bands singing and all this stuff. But it was this really kind of small, intimate. It was an intimate kind of musical in a lot of ways, and that's just the sequel. The first one was already weird enough, but a lot of people liked it because it was just at that perfect time where people were sick of comic book movies. Will Morgan, last thing I want to say before you actually explain what's really going on, David. Will Morgan had said this earlier, something else you're not hitting on. Quentin Tarantino has talked about all it would take is 4 failed superhero movies to capsize the superhero industry in the same way that musicals were inched out after 4 fails, right? And I think that's the thing. People made superhero movies because they made money off of superheroes, and then they made money off superhero movies, and they kept going. Same thing with musicals. Musicals tested well. People liked musicals. They made a few that were flops. That was the end of musical. It was like Grease, and then after Grease, you have the Bee Gees, Sergeant Pepper's musical, and a couple of things like that. Basically, destroyed the musical industry. Was it musicals' fault? Not necessarily, right? Was it
Can
was
you
it Daredevil's fault? Not necessarily.
can you pinpoint the 4 major superhero failures that like tanked the industry?
No, it's something that's in the works. So that's like what Todd Phillips is trying to kind of initiate is like it is like Quentin Tarantino says about the first one. He's like it's subversion on a mass scale. The same thing that he said about well, it was actually Avery, I guess. It was he had written the thing in the film Sleep With Me where he's talking about Top Gun as a gay allegory, where he's saying he's talking about subversion on a mass scale, which I believe is why Lady Gaga did the soundtrack song for the new Top Gun is actually related to what Quentin Tarantino had said. Like that, I think was her interest in it in the first place, or her producer's interest, who maybe directed her in that way. But like there's a sacrifice that's Todd Phillips is like basically making a film first of all with Joker, where he's incorporating the principles of the Golden Bough, where you're killing the thing and replacing the thing with something else. And so and you look at the trajectory of filmmaking and what was cinema and kind of wanting to bring it back to this other thing. Like I think he really resonated with Martin Scorsese's take on superhero movies. And so he's making a super villain origin story, but in that origin story, he's like destroying the whole franchise in a like strategic way. Like it's literally an fu to the film industry, right? So, yeah.
Well, I can believe that. Has anyone seen Todd Phillips' Fish documentary?
No,
Okay,
on the
so
band Fish.
yes, the band Fish. It's called Bittersweet Motel, and basically he wasn't a fan of the band at all, but they liked his movies, so they hired him and they gave him carte blanche. They're like, "You're gonna follow us on tour, and you can do whatever you want with it," and that's why he agreed to make the movie. And so he put some uncomfortable stuff in that movie. Like it is a bizarre movie that like fans had to wrestle with. Like they've got the band going into a gun shop and playing with guns and stuff, and their hippie fans were like, "What is going on?" It's really, really interesting to watch, actually. So in a way, he kind of did that with like sort of the the veneer of what a hippie jam band was, right? Because those guys
Right.
weren't necessarily hippies; they were just nerds, doing their thing.
Well, they have a story that they have multiple stories. Like there's like how do you say it? There's like a narrative that happens at fish shows sometimes where they like I think it's almost like an opera type
Are
of
you
deal.
talking about? You're talking about Gamehenge? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like the thesis for Trey Anastasio's like college project, and so you can find his like demo of it, which is it's like a story, but it's a whole fantasy story where someone very very stereotypical of entering another world, and he becomes the hero. He has to find the helping friendly book, and there's this whole mythology, and then they have other songs that relate to it. that are like tangential to this like narrative. And so occasionally, I think they did it once in like the past decade or something like that, where they'll do a whole set that is Gamehenge, but for the most part, they almost never. And every time they do it, by the way, it's different. Like it'll have a different mix of songs because they've got this.
Of course it does. That's the nature of the jam band thing. I mean, that's started with the Grateful Dead doing that, where you want that kind of like, oh, they're doing it that way, so all the real heads are like, you know.
Well, I mean, to say it started with Grateful Dead is like Frank Zappa was doing some pretty wild stuff before the Dead.
So and jazz bands. So I'm just saying that phenomenon where people go like, what? Yeah,
right. I know what you're saying.
And they're never going to do the songs the same way that they did before. And the places where they change, if you're really following it, are going to be like exciting to the people who are, are into that band. You know, yeah.
But I mean, Zappa was doing that with like band leader. He had his own like hand signals for the band, so he was creating whole compositions where they'd have learned a certain chart, and he'd throw up a sign. It's like, no, you're playing it in 5/4 now, you know? So he was doing, I think, more, well, for sure, more revolutionary things than the Dead, as much as I like the Dead, by the way.
Yeah, Zappa's incredible, obviously, you know, but you can go back further and just imagine like any band that had to play the same music over and over again for years and years and years. Compare that to bands now who hate it. They don't want to just stand there and like play a record that they lip sync to. They get sick of that. Every band does. So in the old days, it was always about how you could combine new things. Louisiana swing bands, right, would do this as well. And I think that's kind of like the venue into jazz out of orchestral music, because you have to be kind of autistic to want to play the same music and like dead of ego. To be an instrumentalist in an orchestra, you have to be dead of ego so that you can just play what's written. And that's not the way. Well, a lot of musicians.
There are some big egos in the classical world, some big egos. But I know what you mean. It's bizarre from a more creative standpoint. But then the creativity gets put into the exact intonation of every note, right? And a real good classical musician, it's about the feeling that they're feeling while they're playing this robotic thing. But you bring up an interesting point, which I think would relate back, although I haven't seen your film, David, that you were showing earlier, which is like the mythology around bands who hated their most famous song, about how much they start to resent the fact that they have to play this song every time. And it's almost like killing their own legacy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're actually kind of relatable to this. What I'm kind of getting at with the video in a way, because it's like why are you doing what you're doing? It's like in the musical bandwagon, they have this like extreme compromise that they make, where it's like the whole premise of they're making a different musical because of the audience's reaction to this guy's vision. Like the truth is that if they had just stuck with it, maybe eventually the audience would catch on, maybe years later. You know what I mean? Like it's just things will be ahead of their time. So it's kind of Kubrickian in that way too, where it's like, you know, you like there's elements that people think that they're going to see a movie that's about one thing, and then enough time goes by, enough processing goes over it, and they realize that there was something else going on. Like anything that's revolutionary in the art world kind of generally has that, right? Like where there's an initial reaction. It's kind of like Schopenhauer's 3 stages of truth, where at first it's ridiculed and then it's opposed, often violently, until it's accepted as self-evident and just becomes integrated into the culture. And so like this would be an example of that. But I think that he chose to go with like Lady Gaga, like for a variety of reasons. One of them is that I don't know, my critique of Lady Gaga is that like I don't know about her most recent album. I mean, I did listen to it, but I don't find an example of this. But generally speaking, throughout Lady Gaga's music career, there's been 1 or 2 songs on each album that's actually a good song. You know, like I would say with the Fame Monster, it was the song Speechless. Like Speechless is an excellent song. With what was it? The Venus one, Art Pop. There was like one song on there, the Dope. It's a good song. Every time she, like, in my opinion, this is, you know, my assessment, like what I see that's best from her is actually when she's doing more of this crooning thing. Like she's like almost like she's like a female crooner, and that's like where her strength is. But the industry has her as this kind of like, you know, just you're going to be a pop musician, and that's not really what she's best at. Like if you listen to the way that she sings, it's kind of unusual, and it actually almost is like the female equivalent of like a Frank Sinatra or something like that.
Well,
That's why, like, yeah.
Another interesting thing that syncs with just us talking right now is that Lady Gaga actually bought the Zappa house. So she, for about a decade, she owned Frank Zappa's house, which he had built this whole music studio in. And the thing that I respect,
the toilet with a tube that goes down to the television set.
No, that's
okay. That's somebody else. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just a student, like whatever. But what I really respect about her is she recorded in there, and I can't remember what album it was, but she actually recorded in the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen, which is what he named it. And I thought that was pretty neat because that was a bit of incredible history that left that family there.
Right. I mean, the symbolism of Gaga, like why she's called Lady Gaga, that it's said that wasn't something she came up with, but her producer. And the idea was Radio Gaga from Queen. If you watch the music video for Radio Gaga, it's all Metropolis footage with Queen inserted into it. And so the whole thing with like the Tower of Babel, no one can understand each other's speech. It's like goo goo gaga, right? So it's like that's like the meaning of the song that they're communicating. And it's like somebody saying something, but they're not hearing it on the other side. And so in Metropolis, like the whole premise of it is that you have the replicant takes the place of the high priestess. So she is one thing, and then the industry has basically made a robot out of her. You know, the term robot is actually derived from a play from the early 1900s that if you watch the show Dollhouse, it's the name of the company that's doing the programming of these, you know, assassins and sex slaves, right? So like that's so the name of the company is the name of the play that introduced the term robot. And so like even if you're watching Metropolis, and even though it's a silent film, you'll see written in it they'll refer to her as a robot. That actually comes from the context it's not long afterwards, I guess is what I'm saying, like that this was a new concept to present it in the what is the nature of a robot. And so she's kind of like a robot in that she's automated by the industry. So she is a product. And so inherent in her, you know, from her beginnings with the Fame and the Fame Monster, you have this like kind of subliminal communication around she is one thing, and then what's being projected to the masses is something else. And so what I'm saying is that within every album, you can see a place where what she actually is, what she wants to do creatively is like coming through. And it's almost like, despite that, you know, the high priestess being held hostage, or the, you know, the leader of the workers, you know, like, because the robot's there to direct the workers. Like they say, like the thing with the winking, you know how like all the musicians, they do this thing where they cover the one eye thing. There's this scene in Metropolis where I forget the guy's name, but he's built the robot, and he's seen her for the first time.
Frederick? Is it Frederick?
Frederick is the
Frieder's and Frieder's son,
right.
And Frieder's son's father is actually, I think, Rotwang. Rotwang is the inventor who's friends, who at least knows. I think there's a love triangle between the hell, right? Hellenism and Helena and all this other stuff, who they make Maria the robot into to look like an effigy, but it's actually Rotwang is the inventor. But when he makes Maria into the robot, there's the winking eye, and it becomes a major point that Maria always has one eyeliner set that's a bit darker than the other eye. You know, for instance, you can see it's always a thing going on there.